Okay, thank you. Okay, now until some others come, I have shown the content page here. Okay. Ramsana and Safni, only 2 students are there. So until I don't know how many are there, but until somebody else also come, so just refresh your mind regarding the areas which we have already discussed. Okay, so I have put the content slide. Just check with your notes and the module. So in 1 or 2 minutes, we will start our discussion. Right, okay. So let's start our work. So first of all, can I know whether you can hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, miss. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now we are meeting after a long time to discuss this module. Can you all remember what we have been discussing last? Yeah. Actually, this second lesson is on consonants and vowels, right? And in this area, we are supposed to talk about these sub areas, right? So I am reminding the stuff for you. And out of these 5 sub areas, of course, I have discussed the first area. Already I have discussed it. The spoken versus the written form of language. Am I correct?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you need to refresh your memory. Otherwise, you would lose the flow of the parts of these areas. Okay, right? Because now all these topics are ordered in a way that flows smoothly one after the other. So if you don't follow any area, any sub area, it might be, I'm not telling that it will be difficult for you, but you might lose the connection in between these sub areas if you miss one area and quickly jump to the next area, right? So in this second lesson, we have already started to talk about about sounds actually, right? This lesson is based on the production of sounds. And as an approach to that major discussion here, the very first area you have the spoken versus the written form of language. Now, you know very well, now abruptly, all of a sudden, we can't be talking about the sounds, right? We know now, if you just have a look at this module, the name of this module, right? You would understand this whole module covers a vast area in language, right? It covers about the production of sound. And not only that, it talks about the syntax, that means the grammatical features of the language. Beyond that, this module gives you an idea regarding the semantics, right? That means the meaning aspect of the words and sentences and how the meaning can be expressed. And above all, the majority, the prominent attention of the module is given to the production of sound part, that means phonetics and phonology, right? When you look at the contents of the module, you would understand this thing. So as an approach to this major discussion on phonetics and phonology, here you are starting with the kind of comparison between the two forms of use in the language. That means the spoken form and the written form. Because normally we all are used to the written form. Okay, we are talking, I mean, I'm not telling that we are not using the spoken form when we want to communicate. We are using, but that is the primary medium of communication via the spoken form. But the thing is, people don't pay their attention to the spoken form quite a lot, although they use the spoken form for the purpose of communication, right? So people just think that I'm not generalizing, but there are cases here and there like this. People in majority, right? They think that talking about language means the written part of the language, talking about the words, talking about the letters, and talking about how we can join parts together and form a word, etc., etc. So actually that is the written part, especially talking about the 26-letter Roman alphabet, that is based on the written aspect of language. So it is because of the written aspect the language survives. That's very clear. But rather than talking about the written aspect, we need to primarily consider about the spoken aspect, because written aspect came quite later, right? It is the spoken form or the spoken aspect or the spoken medium that was there, right, from the beginning of using a language. So that is a primary medium of communication. And remember, therefore, in linguistics, we pay attention to the spoken form rather than to the written form. Okay? Well, just keeping that idea in your mind, we'll just think what we did here, right? Last. So we were talking about the characteristics of the spoken form, and especially the written form, right? Other than the spoken form, how this spoken form differs from the written form. And when we talk about the written form, the characteristics of the writing aspect, the English spelling, right? English spelling, and also now these are some of the features, right? And then something about the spoken aspect, talking about or teaching about and learning about the sounds. And we can show a sound by writing using IPA. That means the phonetic symbols that are there in the International Phonetic Alphabet. Okay. And then advantages of speech and writing regarding the speech and also regarding the writing aspect. Okay, so these are the things we have been discussing so far. So if you renew your memory, you would understand, definitely would have understood. There are advantages of speech over writing, as well as there are advantages of writing aspect over speaking aspect, right? Because these two are different media. So, but in linguistics, our primary attention always goes to the spoken aspect. So based on that logic, this module continues from the next sub area onwards, paying attention to the spoken aspect, right? So accordingly, we have the topic, the production of speech sounds, as the topic of the next lesson. Okay, right. So now can I know whether we were talking about some part from this area as well? Because my memory is a little bit gray here. I'm not sure whether I discussed anything from this part as well. If you remember anything, could you all please update me? Ravsana or Safni?
No, madam, we didn't discuss this one. Last week
Ah,
we didn't discuss. We discussed about the
okay,
morphology,
right.
syntax,
Okay.
semantics.
Right. Okay, Ravsana. So then I will continue today's discussion from this topic onwards. All right. Okay. So now, as I told you, then the rest of this lesson is based on the production of speech sound. I think not only this lesson, even the coming lesson, right? The coming main area is also dealing with phonetics and phonology in a deeper level. So now this is the start to talk about phonetics and phonology in detail later, right? So here we are going to talk about the production of speech sound. So this is the very basic in these two areas, which we call phonetics and phonology, that are the first two layers of analyzing any language. Okay, we can analyze languages in several layers, as I have already told to you, I think, right, somewhere at the very beginning of the discussion. So there we can analyze a language beginning with the sound level and then moving on to the word level, sentence level, finally analyzing the meaning. So in this rough structure or the basic structure, the very first level is dealing with the analysis of the sounds. Sounds means not any sound you can find from elsewhere, right? Human speech sounds. So analyzing human speech sounds means now that area is particularly named as in linguistics phonetics and phonology. Okay, phonetics means studying the human speech sounds. Studying the human speech sounds, considering them one by one, paying attention to individual sounds. And then the part of that area is phonology, where we are talking about, or we are studying about the human speech sounds as a system in combination. What kind of combinations are okay and what kind of other combinations are not okay, and why, what are the rules behind combining the human speech sounds together, and how we can express by combining several sounds, etc. So this, the area called phonology deals with these questions. Okay, so from these two areas also, phonetics and phonology, phonetics is the basement. Without talking about phonetics, we can't talk about phonology. So phonetics is the very basic layer. And in that area, we deal with the human speech sounds. Of course, phonetics is a broad area, right? Dealing with human speech sounds means there we are talking about the human speech sounds in three different aspects. One aspect is the production of human speech sounds. And the other aspect is the transmission of human speech sounds. The third aspect is the perception of human speech sounds. That means production, transmission, and perception. In linguistic terms, we can say production of the human speech sounds is named as articulatory phonetics, and the transmission of human speech sounds is known as the acoustic phonetics. And third one, perception of human speech sounds is known as the auditory phonetics. So these are the three branches of phonetics, three branches. So as I told to you, phonetics is a very large, right? It's a very large area that is dealing with three different aspects with reference to the human speech sounds. So we are not going to talk about all these things now or in this lesson, right? We are limiting our attention here to the first branch only, that is the articulatory phonetics. So from the word articulatory, you can understand what we mean here or what we study here. You know, articulatory is the adjectival form. It comes from the verb articulate. What do you mean by articulate? You have any idea? Your answers and contribution to the discussion is always welcome. So if you know anything, just feel like telling anything, you can talk. What do you mean by articulate? If I ask you to articulate a sound now, what kind of a thing are you going to do? Any idea? Yes? Are you listening?
Express
Yeah. Discuss.
or move.
Sorry?
Express or move.
Express.
Moving.
Yeah. Yes, actually articulate means, remember, articulate equals to the word produce. Okay. So articulating a sound means producing a sound. I think, Rausana, that's what you meant by telling expressing, right? Express, but in phonological terms or phonetic terms or broadly using linguistic terms, we never use the word express. Okay, of course we are expressing. Oh, you can find a much better word like pronouncing sounds. That's right. But in linguistics, we use the word articulate or simply produce. But we can produce a lot of things, no? We can produce sounds. Not only that, we can produce some goods and services, a lot of things. So produce is a very common, broad word. But articulate is totally limited to the sound production, right? We use the word articulate when we want to say produce a sound or producing a sound. So you can articulate sounds, which means you can produce sounds. And we don't use the word articulate in relation to the production of anything else other than sounds, right? So that's the difference between articulate and produce. Other than that, both words mean the same thing. So if I ask you to articulate a sound, what you can do is to produce a sound, or in closer terms, you would pronounce a sound. Right? That's all. Okay. Well, so I told you then articulatory phonetics is the major branch in phonetics that deals with the production of speech sounds. It deals with the production of speech sounds, right? So now from this topic onwards, we are going to talk about the production of speech sounds. And in this topic, you get the very basic knowledge in relation to the production of speech sounds, right? So now let's have a look at this. English and most languages of the world use the egressive palmonic system to generate speech sounds. So these words are quite important actually, right? Egressive, palmonic. Now, you know, when we want to speak, right? When we want to produce some sounds, we definitely should have something without which we can't or we are unable to produce any sound. So can any one of you guess what I mean? What is compulsory? Now that is there within our body, right? We produce it within our body. We need it to produce sounds. So can you guess what I mean? Yeah. What do you want to have? If you want to talk, what should be there inside your body? Is it the lips or tongue, or do you say the mouth or something else? What do you mean? You may have different idea, but can try.
Lungs? Lungs, maybe?
Yes.
Air.
Yes. Yes, Ravzana, what is your next word? After
When
lungs?
air is existing, the air
Yes.
will come from the air.
That is the point. That's the point, right? We need the airstream. Without the airstream, we can't produce any sound. Now, although you don't feel that you are producing an airstream inside your body, you may not feel it, right? But still you can talk, no? So while you are talking, what do you do actually? You produce sounds. And for you to produce sounds, you have to have this airstream. And with this airstream, you get the energy to talk, right? Now, usually in our body, we breathe, right? In our body, in the sense, we breathe to live. Why are you breathing? Of course, we are breathing to live. That is our primary purpose. And there's a secondary purpose as well, right? We are breathing to talk as well. We are breathing to talk also. So without breathing, we can't live, no, which means we definitely die if you don't breathe. But other than that primary purpose, still, can you just guess, right? Or try, without breathing, can you talk? Without breathing, breathing here means inhaling air and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhalation, exhalation. Breathing. Okay, inhaling, you take the air in, and exhaling means you put the air out. Taking air in and putting air out. Inhaling, exhaling. That is what we mean by breathing. So my question is, can you talk without breathing? If you are not sure, you can just mute anyway. You have muted your mic, so you can try it. And then unmute and tell. Yeah. Can you talk without breathing? No idea. Oh, are you trying still? Safni? And Rasana?
Hello, madam. Something problem. Connection problem, madam. Hello,
Uh-huh.
madam.
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay.
And I asked a question. I don't know you missed it.
Yes, madam. I missed.
Really? Okay. So I
Can you
was
tell once
asking.
again?
Yeah,
Ah.
sure. I was talking about this breathing. Okay. Breathing system. That means the inside our body, we have we produce the airstream inside our body. That is the result of breathing. Breathing, another word, right? Inhaling air and exhaling air. Okay. So we primarily breathe for the purpose of living now. If we don't breathe, we would die. Other than that primary purpose, I'm asking about its connection with the talking. Talking means the production of the human speech sound. So my question was, can you talk without breathing? Yeah. What do you think?
Can't. No, madam.
No, we can't.
Can't.
Which means we need to breathe to talk as well. Not only to live, we need to breathe. We need to inhale and exhale in order to produce speech sounds also. Especially we produce speech sounds with exhalation, right? With exhaled air. We inhale air. Inhale means we take air inside the body, and then we exhale air. We put the air out of the body. So while we are putting the air out of the body, we produce speech sound. So we use the exhalation, exhaled air, to produce speech sounds. Actually, this exhaled air provides the energy for us to produce sounds. That is why we say this airstream is very much important for the production of speech sounds. Okay, right. So now we'll move on to this paragraph. The term now, I have underlined two words, aggressive and pulmonic, because we say most of the languages in the world use aggressive pulmonic system to generate speech sounds. Now we'll see what we mean by these two words, right? The term aggressive refers to the fact that sound is produced when air is exiting, not entering the lungs. Okay, you know, this air stream is originated or produced inside the lungs of a human being, right? Actually, that are the lungs that produce the airstream. So after the production of the airstream, actually, or after the production of this air inside the lungs, it goes out of lungs. Actually, it exits the lungs. That is why I earlier told to you, to produce sounds, we used exhaled air, not inhaled air. Right? Are you talking while you are inhaling? It's quite interesting to think about these things, right? We never speak while we are inhaling. We speak while we are exhaling, which means when the air goes out of the lungs and finally out of the body. That is why we call this airstream egressive. That is the reason, right? Because if I just summarize, we produce human speech sounds using the airstream that exits the lungs and the body. Now, when you are talking, you just hold your hand in front of your mouth. You might feel small puff of air while you are talking, right? You might feel small puff of air, which means what's happening? While you are talking, which means while you are producing sounds, this airstream, which is there inside your body, goes out of the body. You don't keep it, right? With the production of sounds, okay, simply you produce any sound you like. It may be p or k, g, ch, r, o, u, any vowel or any consonant. You would feel a small puff of air. That means when we produce sounds, the airstream goes out of the body, right? That is why we call it egressive. But you should know there are some languages in the world, especially some African languages, they use egressive, not aggressive airstream, they use ingressive airstream. Ingressive, right? I'll just annotate the word here, ingressive. This is opposite to aggressive, right? Ingressive airstream versus aggressive airstream. So aggressive airstream, we know now, right? The airstream exits the lungs as well as it goes out of the body after the production of the speech sound. It's aggressive. But ingressive airstream means we don't push the airstream out of the body, we keep it inside. Like it's like you're swallowing the sound you produce, a kind of right? We are not putting the airstream out. Actually, that is not familiar to us. Ingressive airstream is not normally used in Asian languages, right? Not only in Sinhala, Tamil, or English. In most of the Asian languages, they don't have ingressive airstream. They are using egressive airstream. Okay, but you should know there are languages in the world that use ingressive airstream as well during their sound production. Okay, so I hope the word egressive is clear to you. And then the word pulmonic. Pulmonic refers to the use of the lungs as the power source, right? So why is that? Because this, this airstream is originated or produced inside the lungs. So the power source behind this airstream is the lungs. That is why we get the word pulmonic, right? So in speaking, air is expelled from the lungs by a downward movement of the ribs and upward movement of the diaphragm. So you can understand what's happening during the process of inhalation and exhalation, right? So when we expel the air from the lungs, then the ribs, what will happen to the rib cage and also the chest and also the diaphragm? I don't think that you should be too much worried about this scientific kind of things, but you may visualize, right, how the diaphragm changes, how the diaphragm relaxes while we are breathing, and also the rib cage. Okay, so just be familiar with this organs, how they are working during the inhalation and exhalation. Otherwise, you don't want to think in detail, right? Thinking deep there. Well, so the air travels up the bronchial respiratory tubes to the trachea or windpipe. Okay, so after the airstream exits the lungs, it travels up finally towards the trachea, or we call it windpipe, right? In Sinhala, Shwasanarya, that windpipe. And after it enters the windpipe, it goes upwards, right? It actually comes upwards towards the mouth, towards the oral tract, passing larynx. Larynx is a speech organ. Larynx, I think, right? You can't see the larynx, but you know where the larynx is situated. In casual speech, it's called Adam's apple. Adam's apple. So they are inside the throat. Okay. So the throat. So larynx, the speech organ called larynx is located inside the throat. So you might have seen in males, there's a small bump in their throat. You know that? We don't find it usually in females. So actually, this small bump is the front part of the larynx, and that is visible only in the males usually, not in the females, right? So the larynx contains a valve which functions to close off the trachea while you are eating. This valve has been adapted for the purpose of speech. It is known as the vocal cords. Actually, now you know about vocal cords, although you have not learned these things systematically. You may have definitely heard about, in Sinhala to say Swaratantra. In English, we have the word vocal cords. And that is why larynx is so much important for us, because it contains vocal cords. So while we are producing sounds, these vocal cords are kept on vibrating. They are vibrating, right? Due to the pressure created by this airstream inside the larynx, the vocal cords are vibrating. Actually, the vocal cords are two muscles stretching horizontally across the larynx, attached to cartilage at either end and controls their movement, right? So there is a pair of cartilages called arytenoid cartilages inside our larynx, arytenoid cartilages. And the vocal cords are also in two sets, right? So these two sets of vocal cords are attached to arytenoid cartilage. And this structure can vary when we produce from one sound to the other sound, right? From one sound to the other sound, this structure varies. Because sometimes, let's see whether you have, okay. You just will go through this also. The vocal cords are relatively open during normal breathing. And now here we are talking about the vocal cords now that are there inside the larynx. So they are relatively open during normal breathing. So while you are not talking, right? When you are just breathing at rest, these vocal cords are usually open. And they are like closed during eating. Because then the food will not enter the lungs. The food will not take up the channel to the lungs, ensuring that actually biologically you might know about this glottis and the epiglottis, right? Epiglottis, you have any idea regarding that organ? Actually, it's not written here. You have only the word glottis, and glottis and epiglottis are two different organs. Glottis is important as a speech organ, whereas epiglottis is not a speech organ. It's a biological organ that has a particular duty there. Are you following what I am telling here? Ravsana and Safni, am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So are you aware of the epiglottis? The role of the epiglottis? Of course, at the moment, I don't have a diagram. Well. Yeah. Here. Okay. Right. So I hope you can see the screen here, the diagram. I'm talking about this one, right? This one. This particular organ. This is called epiglottis. Actually, it's not marked here. The name you can't see. It is called epiglottis that I have marked. Right. So can you guess what it is doing inside our body? What is the use of this epiglottis? Any idea? If you know something, I like it very much, right? If you talk. Yeah. Any idea? What is the role of this epiglottis? If you know something, you just talk, or if you do not have an idea, please tell me so also, so that I need not wait. Yeah. Malsana?
No idea about that.
Idea. Something? Silence means, okay, maybe not that much clear, right? Okay, now this is what's happening, right? So the lungs are somewhere down, lungs are somewhere here. So the airstream is produced inside the lungs and it comes out of the lungs, right? And the first organ it meets is the larynx. So it passes through the larynx. So the vocal cords we were talking, right? These vocal cords are situated inside the larynx. And it passes through the vocal cords. So passes through the larynx, comes upwards like this, goes out of the body in this way, right? Okay, so this is the direction of the airstream when we produce a sound. When we produce a sound, right? Okay, so I'm just asking about the role of this organ. This is called epiglottis, and it is actually not very important in the sound production, as I told to you. Okay, epiglottis. This is the epiglottis, right? So this is important biologically because when we eat something, right? When we eat and swallow something, it also comes in this way, no? Right? Our food, it comes in this way. And now the problem is when the food comes here, there are two tubes. In the picture, of course, you have only one tube shown, right? And there's another tube that goes down here, right? Which is called esophagus. You know about esophagus? Esophagus is the tube that takes food to the stomach. Okay? That takes food to the stomach. So in one side, you have the trachea. Trachea is the windpipe that travels, that actually transports air to and from the lungs. So this is the windpipe, trachea. And the other side, you have the esophagus. So when we eat, where should our food go? Our food should go to the esophagus. They should go to the stomach, no? So the food should take this direction, down to the stomach. Right. So then what will happen if food enter the windpipe? Like this. If food enters the windpipe, what will happen? Now we say in Sinhala, Pitugurayana. Have you heard it? When we eat something, right, we get a cough and somebody has to slap our back, right, to take the things okay, right, to put the things in order. You know about that? Actually, that happens when food enters the windpipe, okay, or to the trachea. That goes down to the lungs. That will happen when the epiglottis does not cover the windpipe. Okay, actually, when we eat something, this epiglottis, it's like a flap, right? This epiglottis covers the windpipe. it is something like this, okay? It will be in this kind of a position, the epiglottis. It covers the entrance to the windpipe so that automatically food will enter the esophagus down to the stomach, right? So this normally happens when we eat something. And otherwise, in other situations, usually the epiglottis does not cover the windpipe because the air stream should go down to the lungs. Now, normally this happens when you eat something and talk. That is why our elders ask us not to talk while we eat something. You might have heard it from your parents, maybe from the elders.
Yes.
Right. Don't talk while eating. They may have advised you. This is the reason, right? So if you eat something and at the same time, if you are kept on talking and talking, right, what will happen? You need to breathe, no? You need the exhalation air to produce speech. And you need to swallow food also at the same time. Then what will happen to epiglottis? It will go mad without being able to function properly. So food may enter the windpipe too. Okay, right. So that is a biological importance of the epiglottis, of course. Now, at the moment, I'll be going back, right? I think I need to clear all this, right? And so we'll go back to the place. So that is actually it's not really the vocal cords. It is when the epiglottis. It is the epiglottis that covers the windpipe while you eat food. Okay, right. So when the epiglottis covers the windpipe, the vocal cords are also automatically closing, right? So that it makes sure that food would never go down to the lungs, right? So we are just talking about the vocal cords now, no? So while we are eating, normally the vocal cords are closed. And during normal breathing at rest, these vocal cords are relatively open. And there's a space between the vocal cords. So this space is named glottis. This is not the epiglottis. Remember, epiglottis is situated outside the larynx. And glottis is situated inside the larynx, in between vocal cords. And when the vocal cords are open, we say glottis is open. And when the vocal cords are closed, when they are tightly touched to each other, we say the glottis is closed. Air continues past the larynx into the pharynx. So, right. So now you just imagine the direction of the air stream now, right? If I summarize it up to the point, the air is produced inside the lungs, then it exits the lungs, and through the windpipe, the airstream comes upwards. The very first organ it meets is the larynx. So inside the larynx, the airstream passes through the vocal cords, right? Through the glottis. And after passing the larynx, the next area the airstream enters is the pharynx. Right? So you have larynx here. This is the larynx. And pharynx is this area. Okay, I'll mark it in another color. Right. The area which I have marked in green color is the pharynx. You have the word pharynx here. So after the airstream passes the larynx, then it enters the pharynx area. Pharynx. Right? This is the word. Whose function is as a connector and resonator. So during the time that the airstream spends inside the pharynx, it is vibrating. Of course, we say it is resonating. Resonating means vibrating. So inside the larynx, the airstream is vibrating. Similarly, inside the pharynx too, the airstream is vibrating, right? Then the air moves into the vocal tract, the next area, vocal tract, consisting of the oral and nasal cavities. So I would go to the diagram again. So this is called vocal tract, this area. I have circled the area in blue. Okay, vocal tract. Actually, this vocal tract consists of two cavities. One is the nasal cavity, the one upper in the upper part, and the other cavity is the oral cavity. Right now, you know, simply oral cavity means the cavity that ends in the mouth, and the nasal cavity is the cavity that ends in the nose. Right? So the oral cavity, that is the mouth, is a resonator and a generator of speech sounds via the articulators, which may be active or passive. Active articulators and passive articulators are there. Right. Okay, just have a look at this. So from these two cavities, actually, it is the oral cavity that is very much important, because it's during the oral cavity we produce majority of the speech sounds. Large number of speech sounds are produced during the inside the oral cavity, because we know these speech organs called lip, teeth, tongue, they are in the picture, right? Uvula, and also velum, palate, alveolar ridge, all these speech organs are located inside the oral cavity. So when the airstream enters the oral cavity, you can imagine it is subjected to a lot of blockings, lot of disturbances made by these speech organs. Speech organs, another name for speech organs is the articulator, right? That is there in the note. Articulators, speech organs. So the role of articulators is very, very important when you talk about or when you analyze about the production or articulation of speech sounds inside the oral cavity. Okay, right. Then if the airstream enters the nasal cavity, then somewhat different. There, the airstream flows through the nasal cavity and goes out of the body through the nose. So if the airstream travels through the nasal cavity, we say we produce, nasal sounds. We produce nasal sounds. Okay. And if the airstream goes out of the body through the mouth, then what do you say? What are the sounds you produce? We produce oral sounds. So majority of the sounds is the oral sounds, not the nasal. Nasal sounds are quite limited there. Okay, right. So these articulators are situated inside the oral cavity. That is why I told you oral cavity is very important, even more important than the nasal cavity. So when we talk about the articulators, you have these active and passive words. You have any idea regarding that? Because you need to be clear with what is there in the module, right? After all. So I hope you have gone through at least once through the module. If you read it, you might get what I'm telling here exactly, right? So when we talk about the speech organs or articulators, there are two types, right? We'll go back to the image. These images are available in the module, okay? And I have actually
Excuse
taken...
me,
Yeah.
I didn't get my model yet.
It's there available in the Google Classroom. I have uploaded it to the Google Classroom, no? Long time ago. Are you not there? Have you not joined the Google Classroom? Daphne?
No, okay.
So then you better ask it from one of your friends, of course. Rausana, I think you already have got the module.
Yes, madam, I have got the module.
The thing is, having the module is not enough actually. Can I know generally, Rausana, whether you had any time to go through it?
Yes, ma'am.
The whole book? Huh?
Yes, I have. I have the book.
Really? No,
Yes.
no, no. No, no. I'm
Which
not
one?
asking whether you have the book or not. Did
Uh,
you read?
Not all the, no. No, madam.
I know it's not possible. Reading the whole module is not
Yeah.
that easy, and it doesn't make sense at all if you just try to read the
No,
whole
no.
thing all at
Yes.
once. So don't do that.
Yes.
But part by part, you can just go through it, okay? Because before you, I think I have told this several times to all of you during our earlier lectures, right? Sessions. Because if you just roughly go through, you may not understand certain areas. It does not matter, right? It doesn't matter at all. Only thing is you need to have the familiarity. At least when we discuss some topics and certain points, facts, then it may ring the bell inside your mind, telling you, okay, you already know something about this. To get that sense, you should read it, of course. I'm not asking you to study the module. Don't do that, okay? You can study the module a bit later, but still now here we are discussing these things. So in order to be clear of what I am telling to you during the lectures, better to have a look at the relevant parts in the module earlier, beforehand the lecture. Okay, so that during the discussions in the lecture, the things will be clearer to you. That is the purpose. That is why I am asking you to read. Otherwise, if you can read the module all along and understand it, there's no need of having lectures like this now, right? So, well, so we'll come back to our discussion then. I was just explaining these two cavities, and I was telling this inside the oral cavity, you have so many articulators. Articulators means the speech organs, and they are marked there, right? The alveolar ridge, teeth, lip, tongue, palate, that's a hard palate, and the velum, uvula. Basically, these are the important articulators. And in the note, you could see there are passive articulators and active articulators. So these articulators are classified into two, active and passive. Do you get any idea what you mean by that? Active and passive articulators? That means active means, moving. Here, active articulators means the articulators that are moving during the production of sound. And passive articulators are the articulators that are not moving. They don't go anywhere. They are fixed where they are. Whereas the active articulators are moving and touching the passive articulators. Right. So by looking at this picture, can you find or can you recognize the active and passive articulators separately? Can you name one or two active articulators? That means the moving ones, the ones that are moving. Okay, I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. Just have a look at the picture. If you have the module, you can refer the module also, but at the moment you can see the screen. Yeah. Yes. What are the active articulators here in this list? Hmm? The speech organs or articulators that are moving, right? Moving while we are talking. That means while we are producing sounds, they move. Usually move. You can't expect them to be moving very in a big or kind of large area. The range is quite limited inside the mouth, but they are the ones that are raising and touching the passive articulators. So what is the obvious active articulator? The very obvious active articulator from this list, that is the tongue, right? Tongue is one of the active articulators. Why is that? Because while we are talking, don't you feel or don't you see your tongue?
Like moving,
right? Yeah, moving. It is the tongue that now there are so many parts in the tongue. The tip of the tongue is there, blade of the tongue, and front of the tongue, and back of the tongue. 4 basic parts are there. So these are the ones that raise and touch the articulators that are fixed above. So, for example, just think about the production of this sound. Okay, I'll write a sound here. This is a sound. I have written it using the phonetic symbol T. When we produce T, what will happen? T. Our tip of the tongue rises a little bit, curls back, okay, and touches somewhere near the palate. T. You can try in the sense you will be able to feel this your own. So if you don't try to produce these sounds, I mean, it will not be effective, right? Because you will only hear me. You don't feel what I feel when I pronounce. So you yourselves have to produce these sounds, some of the sounds at least, and check how the speech organs inside your oral cavity behave. So tongue is an active articulator. Our tip of the tongue rises, touches the area near the hard palate. Okay. So tongue is the active articulator. Then what is the relevant passive articulator in the production of T?
teeth.
No. Are you touching the teeth when
Passive?
you say T? Yeah. When you say T.
No.
Yeah, you can refer the picture, the image. It is the hard palate. Somewhere here. The tongue rises and touches somewhere here. Okay. The hard palate. So hard palate is a passive articulator. Right? Okay, I'll give you another sound. Try this one. This is also the phonetic symbol for the sound K. K. What is the active articulator and what is the passive articulator? K. When you say K, the back of the tongue, this is the back area, right? The back of the tongue rises and touches this area. And this particular area is called velum. This is velum. Okay. So active articulator is the back of the tongue and the passive articulator is the velum. Right? And I'll give you one more sound just to be clear with the difference between active and passive articulators. This is the phonetic symbol for th. Th, th. Like when you say thin, thick, th sound. Okay, you try now. Try to find out the active and passive articulators.
Active with tongue.
Active articulate is anyway the tongue here, especially the tip of the blade of the tongue. And then passive articulator.
Hard palate.
Are you touching the hard palate? Hardware, so yeah, hard palate is right at the above, just above the middle part of the tongue.
Alveolar ridge.
Yeah, actually, when you say th, you raise your tip of the tongue and touch the upper teeth, right? Upper teeth. Just try to produce these sounds. Th, th. Can you say th without having your upper teeth? No, you can't. Right? See upper teeth. So active articulator is the tip of the tongue, whereas the passive, now you don't find upper teeth going anywhere. And you don't find the hard palate or soft palate. They are there, of course, right? While we are talking, our mouth is like moving. But it doesn't matter. These passive articulators are also moving, right? They are fixed there. So in that sense, the upper teeth is the passive articulator. Okay, right? So I think you understood the difference between active and passive articulators. Another name for active articulator, moving, right? Why we are calling them active means moving. So usually the tongue is the active articulator. Other than the tongue, if you just think about the lips, now we have a pair of lips, no, upper lip and lower lip. Just think about the lower lip when you say this sound, right? I'll write the sound. Give me 1 second to have a color. Okay, right. Find me the active and the passive articulators.
Active is lip.
Yes. When we say fur, what is actually, sorry, what is actually moving?
Lips, upper lips, no? Fur.
Are you sure? Is it
Fur.
upper lip or lower lip? Fur.
Lower lip.
Lower lips.
It is
Lower
the lower lip, right? Lower lip, which means the active articulator is the lower lip. And what is the passive articulator? Right.
Teeth.
Upper teeth, right? Passive articulator is upper teeth. Passive means stationary, right? That is fixed there. So usually when we say fur, what does happen? We bite our lower lip with the upper teeth, right? Don't we do so? We bite our lower lip with the upper teeth, fur, and there's a similar one, ver, right? When you say ver also, same thing happens. Active articulator is the lower lip and passive articulator is the upper teeth. Okay, so just like that, when we produce any sound, you should know definitely there have to be two articulators. Only one speech organ or one articulator cannot produce sounds, no, all along. There have to be two articulators, one active, the other one passive, right? So usually active articulator moves or goes towards the passive articulator and makes contact with it when we produce sounds. All right. Well, then we move to the, okay, I have given some more points there, right? The active articulators include this, the tongue. This is what I was telling earlier. Right now you have more information. Now all these things are available in the module, okay? The tongue. This is divided into the front and the back, the basically and the root, right? Basic divisions. There are 3 basic divisions. The front of the tongue, and okay, I'll go to another color. The front of the tongue, the back of the tongue, and the root of the tongue. So what is meant by the front? Front consists of the tip or apex and the blade or lamina, right? So the front part means, now you know the tip of your tongue, tip means muduna, right? If you put your tongue out, the others will easily see the tip of your tongue. That is called apex also, right? And the area slightly after the tip of the tongue is called blade of the tongue, right? Area slightly after the tip is called blade or lamina, right? So these 2 areas are called the front. And then the back or dorsum, the back part of the tongue. The third area, the root, right? The tongue modifies the shape of the cavity, acts as a valve by touching parts of the mouth to stop the flow of air, and is shaped in various ways to direct the flow of air. So this is a small description on what the tongue is doing, of course, right? Usually the tongue modifies the shape of the cavity, and it acts as a valve by touching parts of the mouth to stop the flow of air. So you should understand, when we produce sounds, we shape the airstream that comes from the lungs, right? That airstream that is produced inside the lungs comes out of it and enters the oral tract. No? So after it enters the oral tract, there are articulators, active articulators and passive. So as an active articulator, tongue is very important here because it moves here and there inside the mouth or inside the oral cavity and shapes this airstream. Sometimes it helps to block the airstream in various degrees, and in some other times it shapes the airstream to produce different types of sounds like vowels, consonants, etc. So we are going to talk about that part soon. Okay, so that is the role of the tongue. And the other active articulator is the lower lip. Lower lip. The lip may be placed against the upper teeth, just like when you say the or the, or together with the upper lip, may be closed or open, rounded or spread. So these are the different positions the lips can take, right? Sometimes now, when you think about the production of over, lower lip goes, actually the lower lip is bitten by the upper teeth. That is one position. And other than that, lower lip is important when we produce the sounds like oo, o. What's happening? It contacts with the upper lip and together come to a kind of round position, right? Lips rounded, we say. Lips rounded so that the airstream is shaped and produce the particular sound. So when we produce some vowel sounds like oo, oo, o, what will happen? Both lower lip and the upper lip are rounded. So because of their rounding, we shape the airstream that passes through our mouth. So it is due to this shaping, we produce the sounds like oo, oo, o, etc. Okay. Well, so that is why, so rather than the upper lip, of course, it's the lower lip. That's very important in the production of sounds. Okay, so these are the 2 main active articulators, the tongue and the lower lip. Okay. And when you think about the passive articulators, here you have some more information. You have the teeth, both upper and lower, and the pharynx, And there are some more informations there. Okay, what's this? I have lost the image. Okay. Well, so we'll just have a look at here. The teeth is one passive articulator. So when we talk about teeth, both upper and lower, right? We have the upper teeth, we have the lower teeth. So both are passive articulators. They don't go anywhere, right? They are fixed. And the roof of the mouth. Roof of the mouth. Now, can you imagine what you mean by this roof of the mouth? Inside the oral cavity. So inside our mouth, right? Right above the tongue, what do we have? Right above the tongue, we have the roof of the mouth. And that has so many parts in it, right? Which is divided into one part is the alveolar ridge, which is 1 centimeter behind the upper teeth. So can you all find your alveolar ridge? It's not very prominent. Most of the time, of course, many people are not talking about the alveolar ridge. So did you find that? Yes. Okay, just think about this sound. This is a sound. Okay. The symbol of the sound L. L. Like when you say like, lake, link, the initial sound. So you use your tip of the tongue. Tip of the tongue is the active articulator. And where does it touch? You just produce L and find the place. If you found the place, tell me. Found.
Upper teeth.
Yeah. That is now, when you say L, you might feel your tip of the tongue rises and touches a particular place above the mouth, right?
Yes.
The tip of the tongue touches a particular place, and that place is not the upper teeth, okay? A little bit after the upper teeth. Little bit after the upper teeth. And that place is called alveolar ridge. Actually, the beginning of the upper teeth, right? So it says usually 1 centimeter behind the upper teeth. That is the area called the alveolar ridge, L. So not only L, there are some more sounds that are produced in this place, like N, right? N. When you say N, also your tongue touches the alveolar ridge. And S, when you say S, the tip of the tongue does not completely touch the alveolar ridge, right? But it goes closer to the alveolar ridge. S. Okay, you need to produce these things on your own, you would fail. Okay, that is one part in the roof of the mouth, the alveolar ridge. And the second part, the hard palate. Now, you know about the hard palate very well. That is the rough area, hard area, which is the dome, bony plate, right? The hard palate. And the third area is the soft palate. Another word for soft palate is the velum. So this is actually, as the name says, it is soft. This is very soft, which is the muscular flap at the rear, right? And the uvula, which is the tip of the velum, right? Okay. So now, are you aware of the uvula? Can you just, now we have the diagram. Okay, now look at this diagram. Uvula is this hanging part, right? Can you see the picture? This is the uvula. we call uvula, and velum is the area a little above uvula, right? This soft area. This is called soft palate or velum. And hard palate is this area, right? And the alveolar ridge is located here. And this is what you call the upper teeth. Okay, now I think these areas are clear to you. And regarding this uvula, I hope you know about, you are aware of the existence of your uvula. This is not normally seen, right? You don't see it. But if you scream, others may see your uvula. If you want to, by purpose, see the uvula, you can go in front of a mirror, open your mouth widely, and you would see it. Uvula. Okay. Now, have you all noticed where these articulators are located now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the alveolar ridge, hard palate, soft palate, and the uvula. These are the particular passive articulators that are located in the roof of the mouth. Okay, right. And the other passive articulator is called the pharynx, or back of the throat, which is used by some languages, but not English, in producing speech sounds. So I have earlier marked the pharynx. Of course, pharynx is not very much important for us because it doesn't mean a lot. In our languages, we don't have pharyngeal sounds, right? So, but pharynx is kind of speech organs, considered as a speech organ, because inside the pharynx, some people produce speech sounds. Not hopefully our languages, right? The users of the languages which we are using, not us. So it is anyway called a passive articulator, right? So be familiar then. Active, there are of course two major active articulators, the tongue and the lip. Lip also the upper lip especially. And passive articulators are the teeth, all the four parts of the roof of the mouth, and also the pharynx, right? Well, okay, so now you have some idea regarding what's happening during the speech production. Then you have got some idea about the location of these speech organs as well. Okay, right. Now we are moving on to the another important section, production of oral and nasal sounds, right? This is quite important, and to understand this thing, you need to refer to this diagram. So just give me 1 second. I need to clear all these things. So let's see whether we can clear all the writings. Okay, okay, great, fine. Well, so let's go back to the point. Now, are you ready? You two ready to talk about the production of oral and nasal sounds? Any doubt regarding the previous discussion? Up to now? Just let me know if you have doubt regarding whatever a thing we are discussing, right? Okay, so then now we are going to talk about the production of oral sounds and nasal sounds. These two are two opposites, right? Two different sounds. An oral sound is not a nasal sound, as well as a nasal sound is not an oral sound. Okay, so for a sound to be oral or nasal, there is a deciding factor. There is a deciding factor. That factor is the function of the velum, right? Now, you know, earlier, in the earlier slide, we discussed velum or the soft palate is a passive articulator, right? Just 1 or 2 minutes ago, that's what we discussed. Velum is a passive articulator. But now, in the production of oral and nasal sounds, the velum is moving. Okay. at the general level, velum is considered to be passive. But when we talk about differentiating a speech sound as oral or nasal, there the velum is considered to be moving. Actually, it is moving. Right? In some situations, this velum is raised. In some other situations, this velum is lowered. Before we go to the diagram, we would just look at this area. If it is raised against the back of the pharynx, it is called velic closure, right? Blocking the entrance to the nasal passageway, then air passes out only through the oral cavity, right? The result is known as an oral sound. Now look at the image. The first one, right? A, velum raised. So you can see, we don't say actually the uvula is raised, okay? Don't misunderstand here. It's not the uvula, it is the velum that we identify to be raised. So you can find this velum is raised. It is almost touching this wall, right? So now as a result, what will happen to the airstream? Airstream is coming up like this now, right? It comes up like this. Now the velum is raised and it blocks the entrance to the nasal cavity. This is the nasal cavity. So airstream cannot enter the nasal cavity as the entrance is blocked by raising the velum, the raised velum. So as a result, airstream enters the oral cavity, passes through the oral cavity, goes out of the body through the mouth. And then we say, in this situation, we produce oral sounds. We produce oral sounds. Okay. Right. And this all happen when the velum is raised. And the other position of the velum is that it can lower. If the velum is lowered, this is called velic opening, right? Then air can pass out through the other cavity, that is the nose. So if air passes out of the nose exclusively, a nasal sound is produced. Look at the second image, velum lowered. So you can see the velum is not raised like in the first picture. It is lowered here, right? It's lowered. So as a result of that, the airstream has the chance to enter the nasal cavity. It can enter the nasal cavity. It flows through the nasal cavity, goes out of the body through nose. So the sounds which we produced in this situation are called nasal sounds. Nasal sounds are produced. And if air passes out of both the nose and the mouth, a nasalized sound is produced. So usually in this kind of situation, the second image, air can enter the nasal cavity as well as the oral cavity. So we say the sound is almost nasalized, not nasal. The sound is nasalized. So nasalizing a sound is different from nasal sound. Nasalizing a sound means we can nasalize an oral sound. But nasal sound is a nasal sound by origin. Okay, now you have small work in the sense, just try to find out the oral sounds and nasal sounds. Just pay attention to the consonants only. Don't think about the vowels because almost all the vowels are oral. Right? Almost all the vowels are oral. But there are some nasal consonants and oral consonants. What are the nasal consonants? Let's try to find some.
D.
Yeah.
D letter.
D. Actually, D is a letter, not a sound.
Ed.
Ed. Ed. O. it is D, right? For the easiness of teaching and learning the consonants, we just couple the consonants with the vowel sound. And we said t, na, l, f, v. Actual pronunciation is id, in, il, if, but it's not clear now, right? It's not clear. So we attach it with the vowel sound and say t, d, na, l, like that. Okay, so these are the consonants. So I was asking about the nasal consonants. So what's the nasal consonant? Any nasal consonant? D is not a nasal consonant, of course. So how do you find a nasal consonant? When we produce a nasal consonant, what's happening? The air flows through the nasal cavity, right? Her, of course, her. Okay. Use your hand, right? Hold your hand in front of your face. Her. Say her. You feel puff of air from the side of the nose or from the mouth. Her. Actually, air stream passes through the mouth when you say her, right? It's not a nasal sound. So we can easily find out nasal sounds. The airstream passes through the nose, goes out of the body through nose, but that is not very clearly felt anyway. Okay, so the other ways, yeah, the other way is you just try some sounds by blocking the nose. If you can still the produce sound with its original sound, even by blocking your nose, that is an oral sound. But if you can't get the original sound by producing it with blocking the nose, then that's a nasal sound, right? Okay, I'll give you the examples of nasals as Safni, right? You said this one, if I heard correctly, this is n, not her, okay? This is n, and this is another nasal sound, m, and there's a third nasal sound. This is the phonetic symbol. This sound is the sound that is there in the word ink. Nothing, the last sound of nothing and the middle sound of ink, ng. Ng. You need to produce this using your back of the tongue touching the soft palate. Ng, ng. Just like when you say k, g, right? Ng. But the difference is when you produce ng, the airstream enters the nasal cavity and goes out of the body through the nose. Ng. There are 3 nasals. These 3 nasals are listed in the International Phonetic Alphabet, and there's another nasal sound which is known commonly by the Sri Lankans, right? It's not available in the International Phonetic Alphabet, but we know that sound. Can you guess? Something similar to these 3, but not exactly like these 3. Any of these 3, similar to these 3. Can you guess? If you have cats in your home, you know. Yes. Yeah. What is any idea? Yeah, write the symbol, phonetic symbol. Okay, this is the phonetic symbol. Now, can you guess the sound? Hello?
Mm.
Hmm. Hmm. If you have cats, no idea. You don't know about how the cats are talking, especially in Sinhala. We know cats can use so many languages now, right? In English, cats are talking like what? Meow. Right? In
Yeah.
Sinhala, in Sinhala, how do they talk? Yeah. Meow.
Nya, nga,
Yeah. Yeah.
nya.
Meow is, of course, when they are choosing English language. The
Yeah.
thing is,
Yeah.
yeah. Meow is, of course, that's how we say cat's noise in English. But in Sinhala, it's meow, right? You may have heard. People are telling that
Yeah.
people are using nya, nya sound, right? Nya. And this is the symbol for that. So that is also nasal sound. Nya is also a nasal sound. So there are 4 nasal sounds here. I have written the symbols for these 4 on screen. Ma, na, nga, and nya. So you can't produce any of these 4 nasal sounds by blocking your nose. Because when you say these sounds, definitely the air stream goes out of the body through the nose. So if you block that way, it's really difficult for us to produce the original sound. We may be telling something, the sound may be something, but it does not look like, or it does not sound as the same sound. Okay, if you want, you can try, of course. No problem. You can mute and try. It is not the original sound. If you block your nose, blocking nose means not just by touching the nose, right? You have to hardly press your nose to make sure that air does not pass through the nose. So if you block the nasal cavity, you can't produce. What is the conclusion? That is, what is the idea? These 4 sounds are nasal by origin. And except for these 4, all the other consonants and all the vowels are oral sounds. They are oral sounds, right? And there's another third option there in the note. If air passes out of both the nose and the mouth, a nasalized sound is produced. So like in this way then, right? When the airstream can enter the oral cavity as well as the nasal cavity, then we nasalize. So you may have heard, now this thing happens. Usually this thing happens, or people do, right? We call it nasalization. Sorry. Nasalization. So nasalization means nasalizing an oral sound. This happens when you are not feeling well, when you are suffering from cold. What's happened? What has happened? When you're suffering from cold, don't you feel like your airstream is passing through the nasal cavity? Very difficult even, right? So that's nasalization. The airstream is passing both through the nasal cavity as well as the oral cavity. And also, you can deliberately nasalize a sound. You may have heard some singers, right? They have nasal tone. Actually, that is not their original sound or not the original voice. When they sing, right, they deliberately push the airstream out of their body through the nose. Nasalized sounds. So nasalization can happen or can be consciously done. So that is another option, right? So nasalization is not equal to the original nasal sounds. Okay, are you all clear with the production of oral and nasal sounds?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The vocal tract with velum raised and velum lowered. So actually, I started telling the difference between oral and nasal sounds is the deciding factor is the velum. So always remember, this is the reason. The velum raising and lowering. So if the velum is raised, the entrance to the nasal cavity is blocked. So we can't produce any nasal sound, we produce the oral sounds. And if the velum is lowered, there is a space created to enter the nasal cavity. The space is created so that the airstream would enter the nasal cavity, producing nasal sounds. Right? So that is the deciding factor. So in this case, of course, we can see our velum is raising or lowering. So it's moving. Okay, right. And just like that, we have another area called production of voiced and voiceless. Voiced and voiceless sounds. So this is also an important aspect. When now we are talking about the production of sounds, no? Right? Production of sounds from so many different aspects we are talking. So far, if I just think about what we discussed today, right? Basically, we discussed the airstream mechanism. That means what happens to the airstream, how the airstream is produced, where the airstream is produced, and after the production of the airstream, what happens to it, and what are the speech organs that block the airstream or that shape up the airstream once it enters the oral cavity, and what are happening inside the larynx also, the role of the vocal cords, all these things. And then you thought about the production of oral and nasal consonants. So they are also the function of the velum is very important, and what's happening to the airstream when the velum is lowered and raised. Okay, these are the things we have discussed in detail. And today we don't have enough time to finish our discussion on the production of voiced and voiceless sounds, but instead we will just start. Okay. We'll start thinking about these two different sounds, and tomorrow also we are meeting. So I can continue this discussion tomorrow. Okay. So before we wind up today, I need you to just go through this part, because I know, although I asked you to read the module, it's not that easy with all the other works. Right? You may forget or you may not find enough time. So it doesn't matter. Now we are talking about these things. So you just take 1 or 2 minutes and be clear with what this note says. Because just now we talked about the production of oral and nasal sounds. So the production of voiced and voiceless sound is somewhat totally different from that. So you need to focus your attention. So as an approach to that, I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, and go through these lines that you can see in the screen now, right? Go through this. Right. So I think you have got some idea by reading these lines. Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, when the vocal cords are widely separated and fairly stretched, no voice is produced, of course. So before we go line by line here, you need to understand the production of voiced and voiceless sounds happens or takes place inside the larynx. Okay. So it's totally the structure, the particular structure and the function of the vocal cords along with the glottis that decide whether a sound is going to be a voiced sound or a voiceless sound. So voiced means phonation, right? Another phonetic word for that is the phonation. And phonation here is voicing. So now you know, okay, I'll give you one simple example right at the beginning of this discussion. Two sounds I'll give you, right? Two sounds. This is per and the other sound is ber. Both are consonants, right? So when you produce these two sounds individually, right, one after the other, per, ber, in which sound do you feel voicing, a kind of voicing? You are voicing which sound? Here, voicing means you are not simply pronouncing or articulating, right? Your voice is heavy. Voicing is that. Your voicing is heavy. To be precise, what is happening is that your vocal cords are vibrating. That is why I told you the voice is a bit heavy, heavier than the other sound. So which is that? If your voice is a bit heavy and if the vocal cords are vibrating, we say we produce voiced sound. And if not, we say we produce voiceless sound. So next day, tomorrow, we'll discuss the mechanism behind this. But for the moment, can you identify what is the voiced sound and what is the voiceless sound? You can produce both separately and feel the voicing. Yeah. Is it per or ber? That is voiced.
But
What happens to ber when you say it? Why do you say ber is voiced? When you say ber, you feel like you are doing it out of your, that means something is happening inside the throat. Don't you feel so? Something is happening inside the throat. Yeah, vocal cords are kept on vibrating. Of course, you don't see it, but you feel it. But you just touch your throat because you can't touch your larynx. You can touch still your throat. Ber.
it's getting vibrated.
Yeah, when we say ber, we feel a big vibration, right? If you touch your throat with your hand. Comparatively, we don't feel that much of a vibration when we say per. Of course, we feel the vibration in both cases. But when we say ber, the vibration is bigger. Don't you feel like it? So,
Yes, ma'am.
which means ber is the voiced sound, whereas per is the voiceless sound. So there is a particular mechanism that happens inside the larynx to decide whether a sound is going to be voiced like ber and voiceless like per. Okay, for that, we need to talk about the role of this, the vocal cords as well as what happens to the glottis. So you have these diagrams as well. So we'll look at them and see what happens. So shall we continue from this point onwards tomorrow?
Okay,
Because if
ma'am.
I start this now, it should go on.
Okay.
Okay, it should go on
Okay, ma'am.
further. So let's put this to tomorrow. And now you have more students in this batch, right? Not only you too. So better
Oh,
to
ma'am.
pass the message to come to the lectures, because only by reading the module or by just watching video or the recording, you will not gain a lot, right? You need to participate in the discussion, contribute to the discussion, answer the questions. So you need to involve in the work. Then, of course, you will not have anything to study, right? So if you participate in the lectures, you would get all these things very clearly. No need of having an extra effort to watch the recordings or read the module or study the stuff. So therefore, just pass the message to the others to be regular to the lessons, right? Okay, so shall we meet tomorrow then? Just
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Yeah.
so good night.
Thank you. Have a nice